Welcome to Acing It, where the thrill of victory, the agony of defeat, and the passion of sports all collide. I'm your host, Ace Henry, and I'll be here to take you through the most significant stories, news, and topics in sports. We have a lot to unpack, so grab your favorite snack and sit back and relax. Today we're going to be talking about college football week 5, my NFL week... Today we're going to be talking about college football week 5, my NFL week 4 predictions, and what Damian Lillard to the Bucks means for the NBA. Alright, we're not going to go through all the games from college football week 5, but we're going to go through the most important ones, starting with Friday nights, Utah and Oregon State. Oregon State was ranked number 19 at the time. Utah was ranked 10. Oregon State was just coming off that loss to Washington State, I believe, and Utah was coming off that win against UCLA. Oregon State came out on top 21-7. To my surprise, it was 21-0, I believe, for the most of the game, and Utah was able to get a touchdown in the fourth quarter. But this continues to show that the Pac-12 might be the best conference this year in college football, with Washington State beating Oregon State last week and then Oregon State coming back and beating a much higher ranked Utah. It shows that there's no easy win or game in that division or conference, whatever you want to call it. The marquee matchup for today, Saturday, college football, everybody had their eyes on was USC Colorado, and to my surprise and everybody else's, I think it ended up being a really good game. And honestly, if Colorado had their best players and didn't have so many injuries and didn't start off so behind, then we could be talking about a completely different result. I like the way they were able to bounce back from last week's humiliating loss against Oregon and put up a much better fight against USC. They were down 21-0 at one point and 34-14 at the half, I believe. And they were able to cut it back to 48-41. And if they didn't mismanage their time on their last drive when they scored a touchdown, then who knows? They could have had another opportunity to take the game into overtime. But Caleb Williams had another Heisman-like day, threw for over 400 yards and 6 touchdowns. He did have one interception, though, surprisingly. Shedeur bounced back from last week, and if he didn't lose both of these games, then I think he'd still be in the Heisman race. But since he lost these two to Oregon and USC, I think he's out of it. But threw for, I think, 373, 5 touchdowns, and he rushed for a touchdown. Had a very solid game. Colorado looked much better in this game. Obviously, they still have a lot of improving to do when it comes to their defensive line. Their offensive line looked much better today, but could still improve there. I like how they incorporated the run game, and I don't know why they waited till the last drive to seem like they ran the most there, but they should start off the game running more. Like I said in the previous week, I think their first drive or two of the game, they didn't run the ball at all, and I don't know why they start off like that. I think they're scared or worried that they're not going to be able to run the ball, so they give up on it without even trying, which I hate. This outing from Colorado definitely gave me a glimpse of hope for the rest of the season. I thought they might not lose out the season, but it was going to be a struggle for them to finish with a This outing definitely gave me a glimpse of hope for the rest of Colorado's season. Now maybe they'll potentially be able to finish with a winning record, and they'll have more than a fighting chance in the rest of these games, as nobody else is going to be ranked as high as USC. The closest probably being Utah, but they did lose today, so they'll drop in the rankings. But that's like the last game of the season, so we'll see what they are at that time. For USC, this kind of worried me a little bit. Their defense was much worse than I thought, and I think that everybody else thought. They have a great defensive line, but that secondary got attacked in all aspects today. Luckily for them, they play Oregon in the season, so like them not blowing out Colorado and that affecting their rankings doesn't really mean anything, because if they beat Oregon, then they'll obviously move up ahead of them and probably end up being the winner of the Pac-12. That was a great way to start off today. 11 o'clock game in the early window of college football, and let's move on to some other games that I noticed. Not to my surprise, in the SEC, Kentucky beat Florida at Kentucky. Florida was ranked number 22. Kentucky unranked, but they were undefeated. Beat them 33-14. Kentucky dominated Florida with the rushing game. When they got up 23-7, I think it was, they just kept pounding the run game on them, and Florida didn't really stand a chance coming back in that game since the time management was so lopsided. And I never really thought that much of Florida. I just think that Tennessee, this year's Tennessee team, wasn't ready to play them in the swamp. And in college football, home field advantage is such a big sway in outcomes. It's not even crazy unless you're that much better than your opponent. Florida is not that good to me. I don't think it was like a bad loss or anything. I just don't think they were ever that good. And I think Kentucky is super underrated, but I don't know about now. But going into this game, they were underrated. So the SEC in whole, we know, tough conference. But the SEC East looks better this year because Kentucky's improved, Missouri's improved. Obviously, you got Tennessee, Georgia, Florida still, even though they're not the same Florida that we've been used to in like previous years. They're still Florida. So we'll see. We're just going to jump right into Georgia and Auburn. Speaking of Georgia, I said this against South Carolina, but I said they were going to show a sign of weakness finally in like the first time like the last 2 years. And they did in that game, but I said they were going to win. And in this Auburn game on the road, they almost took a loss to an Auburn team who is, quite frankly, looked pretty bad this year. I know they were 3-1, but their loss to Texas A&M previous week was horrible. Their quarterback is not that good, but he is a dual threat and is a much better runner than passer. So he had 12 carries for 92 yards. And I think that dual threat ability from the quarterback was able to keep that Georgia defense at bay a little bit. I mean, they still held them to 20 points, but we're used to seeing Georgia defenses holding teams to 7, 10, 14-point outings, or even less than that. Carson Beck, I think he'll continue to improve throughout the season, but he's not it like that. Luckily, they have Brock Bowers, who actually ended up winning them the game. They still have playmakers. Their run game is a factor to look out for, but Georgia can definitely be got this year. It would be interesting to see them travel to Tennessee this year. Georgia definitely didn't look as dominant as they have been over these last couple of years, so it'll be interesting to see them as the season goes on, and if they make it into the college playoffs, see what happens there. Ole Miss was able to come out with a big win over number 13 LSU, 55-49, a super high scoring game, obviously. Jaden Daniels for LSU had another great day, 414 yards in the air, 4 touchdowns. But Ole Miss's offense was too much for the Tigers to handle. They had 300 yards rushing and passing, which was the first time, at least in 25 years, that's happened in the SEC. I just want to know where this offense was at when they played Alabama and they only scored 10 points. But maybe they tightened up because it's Alabama versus the LSU, even though I think they were ranked the same at those points where they played them. I think Alabama was ranked 13th when they played them, and LSU going into this game was ranked 13th. But they left it all out on the field tonight. LSU has dropped 2 games this year, so you don't really have to worry about them in any SEC West, SEC championship games. Ole Miss still 4-1 in the West, so we'll see. Even though Alabama has that tiebreaker over them, they both have 1 loss. We'll see how that plays out towards the end of the year. They'll obviously move up in the rankings. But the only thing I really don't like about about Ole Miss, is Lane Kiffin. I'm a Tennessee fan, so I hate Lane. He left us to dry, and if you don't know that story, then go do your research. Do your homework on Lane Kiffin. Big win for Ole Miss. Deflating loss for LSU. Kind of knocks them out of any SEC championship contention and far out playoff hopes. Notre Dame was able to sneak away with a close road win against Duke, who actually surprised me. I didn't think Duke had any chance. I thought they were overrated just because they had beat Clemson early on in the year, and that surprised many people. And I know they look like a better Duke team than previous years. So they're ranked 17th. Notre Dame ranked 11th, coming off that Ohio State loss. I guess they got their get back in the way with a game-closing touchdown at the end of the game to seal a victory. But for the most part, it was a much closer game than I thought. Duke was winning 14-13, I believe, for a good part of that second half. So it surprised me that Notre Dame's offense couldn't get it going against Duke, but I guess the strong part of Duke is their defense. If Duke had any resemblance of a real quarterback, then they probably wouldn't have been able to win this game, but he's a dual-threat quarterback that's better using his legs than his arm. He had 18 carries for 88 yards. Sam Hartman, 222 on the day, no touchdowns, but also no picks, so he played a clean game that was just all right. They were able to ride their running back, Audric Estime, who ended up scoring the game-winning touchdown from 30 yards out at the end of the game. That shocked everybody. And I guess Notre Dame's playoff hopes are still alive, even though they're super far out. But just because this game was so close, they'll probably drop a little bit, I would say. Not a dominant bounce-back win after a loss last week like many people were expecting/hoping. So Tennessee, South Carolina. Tennessee came away with the shocking win to me, 41-20 at home. 4-1 on the season. South Carolina drops to 2-3, even though I think they're better than their record says. Tennessee was able to score 41 points behind their strong, dominant rushing game because Joe Milton had a very mediocre day with almost 240 yards, 1 touchdown, and 2 picks. But that Tennessee defense looked good. Besides a long rushing touchdown that they gave up, they looked dominant for most of the day. Had about 5 or so sacks, I think, Spencer Rattler. And I know Tennessee leads the SEC in sacks. It'll be interesting. There's no dominant team in the SEC this year. I think if Tennessee had a better quarterback, they would be up there with like people's picks. And I don't think they would have lost to Florida. So I think they'd be undefeated right now. And it would be another good matchup going into not only that Alabama game, but that Georgia game. I definitely think Tennessee can get one, if not both of those teams, but it'll be a stretch for Georgia. But Alabama, if I know that game is in Tuscaloosa this year, but if they play at their A game, their apex, their focus locked in, then they'll be able to, I think, beat Alabama for 2 years in a row. And then Georgia is at home this year. And like I said earlier, home field advantage is a big thing in college football. They're at Tennessee this year. Georgia obviously has shown some signs of weakness and how you can get them. Tennessee beat South Carolina more convincingly than Georgia beat them. And Tennessee was at home and Georgia was at home when they played. So I don't know. It'll be a good matchup. I don't know. I'm hoping for a shakeup in the rest of the college football season. I just don't want the rankings to stay the same. Everybody wins out. I want something to happen. That's what makes college football exciting, and that I'm also a Tennessee fan, repping my orange tonight for their win. Good win all in all. I just wish Joe Milton would improve on his decision-making / accuracy some, but this is 45th year in college football, so I don't think that'll happen this year, and I guess I just got to wait to look forward to Nico next year. All right, next we're going to get into NFL Week 4 predictions, and I don't do score predictions on here. I think that's kind of cliche, but I do predict how the game will play out, and you can pick the score based off whether you want to listen to me or not, but let's get into it. We're not going to go into every game this week because not every game is worth mentioning or covering, but we're going to go into games that I think there are some shocking takeaways or that most people will be looking and waiting to hear what other people think about them. First game is Dolphins versus Bills. This game is in Buffalo, but home or away, I think people just think that Miami is a good warm weather team, at home team. I think that game against the Patriots, against the best defense in that division, arguably in the AFC, showed that the Dolphins offense and team in general can do what they want to on the road or wherever. I just don't trust Josh Allen, and I feel like this is a kind of big game, but it's also a regular season game, so maybe that cancels out. Now, if this was a big playoff game, I would definitely be picking the Dolphins, but we'll see. I think Tua continues his impressive performance, barring any injuries or setbacks or anything. Honestly, I can't make a pick with this game. I'm not trying to straddle the line, but I just can't make a pick because if you scratch out that embarrassing Week 1 loss against the Jets for the Bills, they've looked really good this year. And obviously the Dolphins, everybody's been talking about them and we know what they look like. They are division opponents, so I don't know whether to expect a high scoring game. This is not going to be a game where they battle it out in the trenches and it's tough and physical just because of how the two teams play, and especially the Dolphins. But I don't know if it'll be a high scoring game or if the Bills will somehow be able to limit them. I just don't know how you limit the Dolphins with Tyreek and Jalen Waddle and their track team of running backs and everything. My takeaway for this game is I don't know, but we'll see tomorrow. Now we got the special teams, the Broncos and Bears, both 0-3. Some call it the battle for Caleb Williams. I think that's a bit offensive to Justin Fields. I know he's looked horrible, second worst QB in the league this year to Zach Wilson, but I think part of that is his coaching, and now he's unsure of what decisions he has to make, what he wants to do, and doesn't have any more confidence. But all in all, can't make too many excuses, so he's just played horrible. This game is in Chicago. Don't really care. Still expecting the Broncos to win. The Broncos, while 0-3, have shown much more signs of life than the Bears have. The Broncos have had chances in multiple games to come out with a win besides that Dolphins game, which we're just going to scratch. But even with the Dolphins game, the Broncos offense wasn't that bad. I mean, Russ, I don't know if he turned it over, but he had about 200, mid-high 200-yard passing day, touchdown or two. The Broncos defense, I think, is still decent, and I think they'll bounce back after getting embarrassed last week. And the Bears offense, this is the perfect time you want to bounce back because the Bears offense is horrible. I don't think they could score against a Pop Warner team if it came down to it. I got the Broncos win this game. Not going to do score, like I said, but not convincingly, but at the same time, it won't be like on a game-winning field goal. So let's just say they got Denver. The spread, the line is by 3.5 on the road. I'm going to say Denver by a touchdown or more. We got Ravens and Browns, and I hear Deshaun Watson may or may not play. If Deshaun's not playing, I'm definitely taking the Ravens because I just don't think that Browns offense will be able to score enough, even as good as their defense is. I know that Browns defense is really good, and they are division rivals, and the game is in Cleveland. I think Lamar has a big day on the ground because I don't know why he just can't seem to connect. with his targets. Even Mark Andrews. Mark Andrews not getting a lot of targets, a lot of receptions right now. Maybe Lamar's trying to work in Zay, and I know Odell's out, his new receiving weapons. And I also think part of it is because of that new offensive coordinator and the offense they're trying to run. I don't know why they would switch it up, because if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But if Deshaun does play and he's healthy, then I'm taking the Browns. That defense has looked amazing, and I think the Browns will be able to score 20-plus points against the Ravens, which will be more than enough to win, I believe. So it kind of just all depends on if Deshaun plays and what Deshaun Watson we get tomorrow. We got the Vikings and Panthers now, and I know you're like, why are you covering this? 2 0-3 teams. Nobody really cares about them. They don't have anything much to talk about besides Bryce Young for the Panthers if he plays, and which I think he is, and Justin Jefferson for the Vikings. But I want to say this is a must-win game for the Vikings. One, you're not completely out of that division yet. I know the Lions look really good. Green Bay is all right. The Bears don't count. Just act like they're not in the division. The Vikings have looked good in every game they played, at least offensively, and they've had a chance to win in all 3 of their games, but somehow they're 0-3 because they found a way to make stupid mistakes or silly turnovers that end up costing them the game in some way. I think if they could just put together a whole performance with their offense and defense, maybe Kirk's numbers don't look so good, but the defense plays better. Something like that. They'll come away with a win on the road against the Panthers, get their first win in the season, and maybe start rolling into a few wins in a row, start stacking them up, something like that. But you definitely don't. I mean, if you fall 0-4 and you lose to the winless Panthers, then you're out of it. You basically you should just look to trade Kirk to New York, which might end up happening. Actually, I think I would like to call that. If the Vikings lose this game, they're trading Kirk to the Jets. Jets might not be able to, might not give up on their season if they get Kirk Cousins for this year. Minnesota might just rebuild, get Jay Jettas gone up out of there, depending on what quarterback they end up with. I don't know. But big changes might be on the rise if the Vikings can't get a win this week against the Panthers. Patriots and Cowboys. Dallas looks to bounce back after a kind of embarrassing week 3 loss, against the Cardinals in Arizona. Patriots look to show that they're a decent team, I would say. Maybe above average, better than expected if they can come up with a win against the Cowboys. They're another team that's been in basically every game they played this year. They're 1-2. Were able to get a win last week over the Jets, which just seems like everybody, maybe even the Bears, could get a... let me take that back. Which seems like everybody but the Bears could get a win over the Jets. The Patriots' defense can keep them in this game. And I think with Bill Belichick being able to scheme and stuff like that, at least defensively, he might be able to come up with something that gets Dak to throw a couple of picks. I think they'll be trying to stop the run first with Tony Pollard. He's been getting a lot of touches, and you could tell this year Mike McCarthy and that Dallas offense is trying to play through their running game and then have Dak more of a play-action passer, not having Dak carry the team. More be like a game manager, just a high-paid game manager. But I think if the Patriots can come out stopping the run and making Dak a passer, then they'll have a good chance to win this game. But at the same time, their offense is horrible too. And Dallas's defense with Micah Parsons will be looking to bounce back after giving up all those yards and points to the Cardinals last week. So I think it'll be a good game. I'm not going to pick the Patriots to win. I think it depends on how they play out. Dallas right now, though, is favored by 6 points. I don't think they'll win by that. I think they win like a field goal or maybe even less if they do end up winning. But since they lost last week, Dallas will probably win. But if they had won, they would have lost this game or had a higher chance of losing this game. But now they're on alert. Now they're on edge. And they also have the 49ers this next week, I believe. So if you lose this week, there's a high chance of you losing against the 49ers regardless. So you don't want to drop 2 to 3 games in a row and end up being 2-3 after starting off 2-0 and looking amazing. So, and then we got the Taylor Swift game, Chiefs and Jets, Sunday night in New York, or New Jersey technically, but Jets are at home. I'm a Chiefs fan, so I'm kind of scared to predict anything crazy. I think the Jets defense is super respectable, and actually they've been getting a lot of disrespect in the media. I still think the Jets are a top defense, but when you have a horrible offense and your defense is on the field more possessions than they would normally be with an average or above average or a good offense, then it's hard to look like the great defense that you actually are. I mean, they held the Patriots to 15 points, and they could only score 10. They lost the game. Chiefs have a top 5 defense in the league this year, surprisingly, and obviously you know what they are on the offensive side of the ball just because of Mahomes. Basically, if the Jets want a chance to win this game, they'll have to keep the Chiefs to 10 to 13 or under And do any of us think that's going to happen? No. I mean, the Chiefs might score more than that on the first 2 drives of the game. Basically, I think this might be the game that Zach Wilson gets benched, booed out the stadium, traded, cut, released, blocked, declined, practice squad, sent back to college, high school, coaching, whatever. But I think this might be Zach Wilson's last game. And I think this is a chance for the Chiefs offense to show that they're starting to put it together more against still a good defense. I would say scoring 30 plus this game. And I think they're gonna make hell for Zach Wilson with that defensive line. And with Spagnuolo, how he likes to come up with different schemes of pressure and blitzing and coverage and all that. I think it's gonna be a rough night for Zach Wilson. I know I said I didn't want to get crazy into the predictions, but it's hard not to when it's a team like the Jets. I mean, damn. And then Monday night, this wouldn't really be a game that I usually cover, but it is the only Monday night game this week. We got Seahawks and Giants. Saquon is not expected to play, at least as of right now. He's doubtful. So Giants 1-2. They're at home. Seahawks 2-1. The offenses look really good with Geno still second year in a row, looking like a top 10 quarterback in the league. I got Seahawks winning this one. They're favored by 1.5, which it would be higher if they weren't on the road. But home field advantage isn't that big of a deal in the NFL like it is in college, unless you're playing at a Seattle, Kansas City. So I got Seattle winning this one pretty convincingly. I think that the Giants offense might be able to get 20 or more points at home. Nah, that still might be too high for them. Everything about the Giants is average or below average. So Seahawks can have the way offensively, I think, and their defense is decent. It's all right. It's average to a little below average. So I got Seahawks winning this one on Monday night to wrap up week 4 of the NFL. Damian Lillard finally got traded, as we all probably heard by now. And no, it's not to the Miami Heat to join Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo. It was to Milwaukee to join Giannis and Brook Lopez, Bobby Portis, Chris Middleton. So now I think Giannis finally got the other superstar that he needed. I think the only other player that would have been a better option to join Giannis was Steph. But that's because Steph is Steph. Dame and Giannis is like a match made in heaven. They both cover each other's weaknesses. Giannis is shooting, that's really his only weakness. Maybe shooting and ball handling. And obviously Dame has no offensive weakness. And his only weakness is on defense, which Giannis is arguably the best defensive player in the league when he wants to be. So this team is definitely the favorite for getting the East in the NBA. I don't really know who rivals them in the East. I know you got the Celtics. I'm not going to really count the Sixers because I don't know what's happening with James Harden. And if it's just Embiid over there, then definitely not. And even with Harden, don't believe in him. The Heat, I don't think they're going to keep having these miracle runs. And they just don't have the roster and talent. They have the chemistry, Heat culture, cool, all that. But against a team like Miami and even the new Celtics this year, I don't think that the Heat will be able to contend like that. If you're thinking about the Cavs or something, on paper, the Cavs look good, but you saw last year, they couldn't even deal with the Knicks. So Milwaukee's my favorite. Luckily, they got Dame, so they'll also be able to keep Giannis most likely for the next, I'd say, 5 years. If they're able to win 1 or 2 rings during this period with Dame and Giannis, then Giannis will stay there. I won't say a buck for life because you never know how that goes, but they have him for the foreseeable future. And the other thing I want to look at, though, in the trade is, one, I think the Phoenix Suns got better getting rid of Aiden, and they have Nurkic now. Get rid of those attitude problems, any dissension in the ranks that they had in that locker room. Drew Holiday going to Portland, but looking to be traded to a contender. It'll be interesting to see where he ends up. Maybe the Lakers will get him, lock that team up a little bit. But another team I'm looking at is Boston. If the Celtics can get Drew Holiday, then you'll basically, in an aspect, have gotten Kristaps Porzingis and traded away Marcus Smart to get a better version of him. Drew Holiday's a better, I wouldn't say better defender. They're comparable, obviously. Marcus Smart won Defensive Player of the Year, but Drew Holiday is considered to be one of, if not the best, point guard defenders in the league. And I think he has a better offensive game than Marcus Smart. And I think he's a smarter player. He's a veteran in the league, has championship experience. So if the Celtics can get Drew Holiday, it won't put him up there with Milwaukee, but it'll definitely even the playing field for that. So I can't wait for the NBA season to start. It's around the corner. We got prime time year for LeBron loading up. It'll be interesting to see if the Warriors can make one more championship run, even though I just found out today that Draymond Green sprained his ankle and he'll be out 4 to 6 weeks. I'm pretty sure missing the opener, maybe the first 1 or 2 weeks of the season. This year, the NBA is starting to level out more with talent across teams. It's not just like super teams. like those Cavs Warriors years, those Heat Spurs type years. Talent is starting to level out across teams, and it's actually becoming more interesting to see. And I'm not really a fan of any team. I'm just a LeBron fan, so wherever he goes, I'm a fan. But I have gotten into the sport more than I was in the past. So I've been paying attention to the ins and outs of basketball, the aspects, rosters, what makes a team good, chemistry, coaching, all that. So can't wait for this NBA season. Get to learn more, watch more basketball, and we'll see what happens. Hopefully, Bron can get that 5th ring. Thank you guys for watching the 3rd episode of Acing It. I love doing this podcast, and hopefully soon I can get some interviews, some guests on here to do it with me. Maybe get a host every now and then to bring somebody else onto the show. I'm switching up the format in these first few episodes, so let me know which type of format you like seeing between what I did in the first video and the second video, and then now this video is going to look like the first video. You can always let me know in the comments or interact with me on my Instagram or TikTok, which I'll leave in the description below. But I appreciate you guys so much. We're almost at 1,000 subscribers, so thank you for helping me get there. And as we continue to grow, just know that I love interacting with you guys every single day, every time, whether I'm posting or not, and I appreciate it so much. And until next time.